welcome to this episode of the Bad Idea Bros. So in the last episode you saw me acquire the Wii CT90 that's sitting behind me. Today's goal is to see if it's going to run. So as I mentioned, it does turn over quite freely. It's been sitting for a lot of years from what I've been told, so it is a bit of a crapshoot at the moment as to what will happen with this thing. But I'm just going to give it a little bit of love today. So I'll drain the oil, see what that looks like, make sure there's no signs of damage on the internals of the motor, put some new oil in it, throw a spark plug in it. I've already drained the fuel. I didn't bother recording that because it was honestly quite a boring process, and it's just pulling fuel out of a fuel tank. The carburetor doesn't look too bad. It's got some crap in it because it's been sitting for so long, but all in all, considering the bike's 48 years old, it doesn't look too bad. So I will move it into a spot that I can work on it, and yeah, just go through a few little maintenance things, check the timing, see if it's got spark, and we'll try and start this thing. So thank you for joining me today, guys. Let's see what we can do.
Okay, so the very first job I wanted to complete on this one was dumping the oil. The reason I started here is that the condition of the oil is usually a pretty good indicator of what's going on inside your motor. In the case of this particular CT90, when I pulled it out, I noticed the oil was a bit of a strange colour and it had a really strong smell of fuel. Now that wasn't super surprising just because the bike has been sitting for some time with fuel in the tank and the petcock open. There's been some fuel leak by the piston and down into the lower part of the motor. So not really unexpected at all. The sump plug was in pretty good condition. Threads weren't damaged or anything, which was nice and made it easier to torque back up. In regards to topping the motor back up, it was just used a 10W40 that I have here in the workshop. Use it in a lot of the bikes. The Keyways run this particular oil, so it was just on hand and easy to use for the CT. It should be fine, maybe a little thin for an older motor, but it was worth just using. The motor won't be run too hard and it might not even go yet, so we'll see how that goes. But you can see on the end of the filler cap there is the dipstick, so made sure that it was at the right level before we carried on. And the next job is the spark plug. So further to the oil being a good indicator of what's going on in the motor, the spark plug is a good indicator of what's going on in the cylinder head. Now, a little black, a little unburnt fuel will give you that sort of colour, but the plug was actually in good condition, as was the diode. That being said, I'm still going to replace it with a new item, just an NGK plug. Run NGK plugs in all the bikes, so yeah, got the appropriate one and fitted it up. Again, the thread in the head was in pretty good condition, and if you don't have one of those little spark plug tools, I advise getting one. They make the job a heck of a lot easier. So now that we established that the oil's changed and we have a good spark plug, we can't check for any spark without having a battery. Now this battery is completely toast. The wiring, as you can see, is in a pretty sorry state. It's been in there for some time. Pulling this out, I was a little bit nervous because in behind the batteries there can be all sorts of creepy crawlies. I've pulled these out before and found mice. That's always a fun time. But thankfully, in this case, it wasn't anything to be worried about. But again, coming back to that wiring, you can see just how shoddy it is. It's got an old house terminal crashed in on the main positive, which fell apart when I started to pull it through. So we'll get rid of that because that is just junk, and we'll carry on from here. So the new battery is a Katana. I've used these before in a few different bikes I've had. They seem to be a pretty good quality for a lead acid battery. Was just going to get something basic for the CT90. I wasn't going to go for a gel battery in this particular case. It didn't need it. Interesting thing about these batteries is when they ship them dry. So you physically put the battery acid in yourself, which is what I'm up to now. You can see the upper and lower levels on the battery there, and it's pretty nasty stuff, so you don't want to be getting this on your hands. So all precautions were taken when filling the battery up, and as you'll see shortly, it will start to darken, which is the battery acid filling up the cells of the battery. now that that's done, it's just a matter of reversing the process we did earlier. So we'll put the battery back in its little home there. We'll get rid of this really sketchy wiring from the old battery. Nice thing with this little 6-volt battery is that the power harness is encapsulated in the battery itself, so it's just plug and play. I don't know the condition of the harness in the bike, so this is just a bit of a fingers crossed moment. Okay, so we'll remove the points cover here. Now that the new battery's in, that gives us a best shot of having a spark. So once this cover comes off, you can see that it's an old points ignition system. And the next step is to just roll the motor over by hand. Now that does two things. That allows me to see if the motor feels bound up at all, which it doesn't. It rolls freely. And I can also check the timing marks to make sure it's going to fire when it should, which it did. So everything seems to be working the way it should. So let's roll this thing out and see if we can get it to run under its own steam. It's a runner. It's a runner. Holy shit.